Well, welcome to another episode of our Lift Church podcast. Super excited, as I always am, to have the conversation I'm about to have today with our guests. And before we get diving into the conversation, I say it each time, but I want to remind you that if you haven't subscribed or chosen to follow along with us on our YouTube or social media platforms, please do so. You can check us out social media-wise, Lift Church FL on all of the social media platforms. And then we want you to follow along on YouTube to see all of our podcast and our live stream here at Lift Church. And so today, it is my gift and privilege to chat with our very own Amanda and Chris Palmer. They are dear friends, becoming even deeper friends to me as the time goes on. I've only known them for a short amount of time, but it feels like forever because we've done so much together already, from hurricanes to ministry and just life. And today we're going to have a conversation so we get to meet you, both of you. I was making a joke before we even got started that you're always up with the kids.
Always.
And he's always cooking. And so you don't get to always have all of the conversations. So I'm super excited to talk to you about just who you are, what your heart's burn for, your story, your testimony. There's little things about you that I'm sure will come out as we talk that I'm excited for people to get to learn about you. And that's really the goal, is for people to hear and then, just have a same kind of heart that you have for kids in this house. You have stirred up a passion in this house for children and kids ministry in ways that I'm just so thankful for, especially because I have a multitude of kids in your ministry. But let's start this way. And this is just the way I've been doing it with everybody I have the privilege of talking to. I know you, but they don't.
Okay.
So you're Amanda Palmer. You're Chris Palmer. But let's start with Amanda and go, take me back to the beginning. Where were you born? Where were you raised? Tell me about your home life, siblings, parents, just a little bit of trajectory before you meet this amazing man over here. What was life like? What were you into? Take us back to that moment and help us to understand a little bit.
I was born in Muncie, Indiana, at Ball Memorial Hospital. That's where David Letterman went to school.
Okay, already great.
and ball jars,
Fact,
ball mason jars, like that.
Oh, is that where that's from? Okay.
Yeah, so that's where I was born, but my father was in the Air Force, so we left there and went to Virginia Beach, and then back to Indiana, and then to Illinois. So, but early memories that I can remember is kindergarten and Rantoul, Illinois. And my dad was an airplane mechanic or helicopter mechanic, and but he taught that when he went to Illinois. So I don't remember a ton of stuff there other than my grandparents owned a Baskin-Robbins store.
They owned a Baskin-Robbins.
They owned a Baskin-Robbins ice cream store.
All the ice cream.
All that I wanted, So that was Irma and Donald Price. So I loved going there. I was in the middle of three girls. My older sister, Jody, is 2.5 years older. She'll say we're the same age. So when she watches this, she'll get a kick out of that. And my younger sister is 4 years younger. She passed away 2 years ago.
Oh,
Carrie was her name, or is her name.
Yes.
But so I would be so excited because I would get to go to my grandparents' house by myself. Which was huge because I got to, the middle kid always kind of gets shuffled around. So that was always special, but we had roller skates. So we would get to put on our roller skates and serve ice cream.
Really?
And get to pick whatever. No, we could never. It's so funny. My mom never let us do daiquiri ice or something else because it was alcohol ice cream.
Too young to skate around with the alcohol.
Right. I mean, there wasn't, but, so.
Or it's because you were the middle kid, they didn't trust you with it?
Right, well, that might have been too. But, so anyways, my mom and dad, Steve and Brenda Price, they, until my dad passed away, they were married 36 years.
Wow.
So they were born in Muncie as well. So that is, I still have
come from
family
that
there,
small town.
that in Indiana,
I love that.
So, and then...
Was it hard moving around, like being in the military?
I was
bounce?
so young. Like we we went from Illinois and then we lived in Kentucky. But I made friends easy, so I don't ever remember it being hard. But that's kindergarten, first grade, so it's easy to do that. My older sister, I think she had a little more trouble doing that. And then we moved back to Indiana, to Attica, Indiana, and my dad was out of the military at this time. And the reason why I say Attica, that's where we helped build a church with Assemblies of God, with Pastor Harvey Lang.
Yeah.
And he's the one that baptized me at 8 years old.
Wow.
So that is so rooted in me, getting baptized in a pool.
Okay.
With Harvey Lang in the middle of the country with all these people that I'm still know today. I'm like, that was the start of what God had me on.
Ministry for you.
Most definitely.
Were you close with your sisters? Did you have good relationships? From what I've known, you do, but I'm just curious. How was that?
It's funny. Yeah, we were close. My younger sister Carrie had a lot of health issues, and I always we loved each other.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but I was always the one. I always felt like in a bullfight, waving the red flag.
Yeah.
The
matador.
The matador. Thank you. And she always came at me.
Okay.
And she was 4 years younger than me, but I loved her anyways.
Sure,
I just
she was
knew
a little
how
bit
to
more
take
of a Spitfire
her.
then?
She was way more.
Were you the peacemaker?
I most definitely.
My mother's the middle child, and she's a peacemaker.
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
it's
she
known
helps
for
to
that.
Do that.
Most definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
And because I always there were struggles. I mean, growing up, we were fine. We shared a room, and but as we got older, I knew. I tried to make that peace. She's still my sister. We may not see things the same way, but I loved her and miss her. But it's like we just were in different
polar opposites.
Complete polar opposites. But she had a heart. She would do anything for anybody.
Sure.
But I just knew how to handle her and just be like,
I love that. I
love
appreciate you sharing. It's like makes it real. That like it. Growing up a middle kid and people are listening, they're gonna resonate with that and understand what you went through. What's it like growing up in Indiana? I grew up in West Virginia, but like, what's a teenager or an elementary student doing in Indiana?
We were in the city, we were in a suburb.
Okay. So you were a city slicker.
So not the same as you guys.
Yeah, we're country boys, me and Chris.
I don't know, 5th, 6th grade, we lived out in the country, but it was 2 miles riding our bike to Dairy Queen.
Oh yeah, I can't.
And back then we could do that, but it was country or cornfields and a country road, and but nothing like
still small town feel though.
Most
like
definitely.
Everybody knows everybody.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Now it's less like that now since we've been away 14 years. It's kind of exploded. Yeah,
it's grown.
It's grown.
Yeah, okay,
but it was. I had 380 people in my graduating class,
and
we were like the biggest senior class to go through in 1989.
Dating yourself. Be careful now.
I'm sorry. I'm proudly 53.
Good for you.
But growing up, we had a pop-up camper, and we would set it up in the driveway.
Okay.
And we would go to the lake on the weekend and fish and do that stuff, but very mild compared to what he would do. But
is that what you liked to do growing up? Like, what did you like to do?
I loved playing softball.
Okay.
Playing out, climbing trees, doing more of tomboy things.
Yeah, tomboy,
riding
athlete,
the bike.
I hear that. Okay.
Yeah. I never really liked camping because I didn't like dirty water.
Still don't.
I still don't.
Okay.
But
you wouldn't jump in the pond and fish?
I would go. I wouldn't even hook the worms, but I love throwing it out or cane pole hooking. My dad had 3 girls. What is he going to do? He's going to try and do that boy stuff with you to make you, whatever.
It's the same thing my wife says in her, testimony of her growing up. Marine dad,
right?
So he had a military father.
Oh yeah,
taking her.
It was 0600, military. I still use that, and people go, "Why do you use military time?" Well, that's all I grew up knowing.
Yeah.
So, and I got, we woke up to him going, doo, 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 doo. That is how we woke up. Yeah.
Wow.
So, and I miss that.
Yeah.
I love that. But
so good. Now, when you're, let me ask this about growing up. You had the hobbies of being more tomboyish. But were you going on dates when you were in high school? Did you start to care about boys at a certain point? Because I know eventually you found the man of your dreams over here.
It was later for me.
Okay.
So I was so focused from the time I was very young. I wanted to be a nurse.
Okay.
I would ask for Band-Aids for my birthday, and I would get them in the metal box of the Band-Aid ring. And that was the best gift for me. Like, I love that. Yeah, it was so simple. And in high school, like, I did an athletic training course, so I had more guy friends because I was with them. I helped the football team, the soccer team. Then spring, I played softball. So boys were completely on the back burner. I was laser focused to make the grades, get out of high school, become a nurse, period, or the military. Like, that is completely what was in my mind.
I just became even more thankful that you are my daughter's children's pastor currently. That she will not date until she's 35.
Right. Well, and the other part of that, my older sister got pregnant when I was a sophomore in high school.
How did that shape you?
It made me even more laser focused.
Okay.
Like, the love for kids at an early age, but the love for my sister, like.
Wow.
I'm such a crier. You'll know this about me if you don't know it already. I got made fun of.
Because you were crying?
Yeah. No, and things said. From imagine. Boys. Just like, oh, are you like your sister? Well, my sister was not like that either. She was in a committed relationship in high school, but I quickly realized I love my niece, Katie. That's not the life I want. So for me, boys were just friends. Like, that just wasn't, I didn't want anything to do with that.
Yeah.
Because family was priority. And even, it's funny, senior year, I'd go to football games, toting my niece around in a stroller. And people are like, what are you doing? Why do you have a boyfriend? Well, because she's way more important. And to this day, I have friends, like, reunions come up, hey, how's your niece? Because she was always part of who I was.
Yeah, so you've been a nurturer for a long
Always.
time. Yeah, always for the kids. That's probably part of the reason you became a nurse then and went through those things. Tell me more about that. So
Nursing?
Yeah, in nursing, how did you start in that? What was that like?
So schooling took me like 6 years to get through because loans and paying for it ourselves,
Completely
whatever.
Yeah.
We didn't have a lot of money growing up, so I was telling Ben earlier, I said, I remember riding my bike to the grocery store with pop bottles to get the deposit back to buy rolls of toilet paper.
Yeah, wow.
And just because that's just what our family did. Like, it was everyone chip in. And
I love that, though.
yeah, it was just
because that shapes you.
Most definitely.
Like, you have an appreciation for things. It actually makes so much sense, too, why you're so fond of working towards raising money for missions. That kind of humility that's come through your upbringing and those challenges that come, with having, humble beginnings.
Yes.
I think that's shaped you significantly and why you're so passionate about that. So you had to help pay your way into nursing.
Yes. And finally, I graduated, and in the last 3 years of nursing schools when I met Chris.
Okay.
And I always thought with the nursing, I knew I wanted to be a nurse for so long. And I always thought, because my mom worked at Methodist Hospital downtown Indianapolis, and they had the flight helicopter nurses. So they would go out to trauma, whatever. I always thought that's what I wanted to do. And then I got in nursing school and went through an ER rotation and a surgery rotation. And when they were breaking out the saws, I passed out in the OR. And I'm like,
goodness.
I don't want trauma nursing. But I went through my OB rotation and I was fascinated by everything. So that I laser focused in then to do OB nursing. So I graduated. Before I even graduated, I was working as a student nurse on the OB floor. And again, just everything. I could not get enough of what I could learn. Yeah. So that was
I love that.
Pretty cool. So I did that 14 years.
Now, of course, I'm very partial to nursing with my son. My oldest son is a nurse in the medical field. And so let me come back to this, because you made a statement. You met your husband in the midst of this journey of nursing, and I'd like to hear that story. How did you meet? Your perspective first, because I'm getting ready to start to unpack his history. But and so what we'll do is we'll hear from you how you meet him, and then we'll hear from him his history, and then he'll catch up.
Okay.
I want to hear his perspective of how he meets you. But you tell me your perspective. How did you meet the man, the myth, the legend that is Chris Balmer?
I was in summer classes at IUPUI, Indiana University, Purdue University at Indianapolis. So, for the Hoosiers out there, But I always wanted to go to Evangel, actually, and we couldn't do that. Wow. So then I went local, which was IUPUI. But it was summer class, and a friend of mine said, hey, my boyfriend's playing softball. Do you want to come over for the weekend, and we'll study, and then we'll go to the softball game? I'm like, okay, sure. And it was a Friday night, and we go, and in the parking lot, Chris is walking out, and she's like, hey, this is Chris, blah, blah. I'm like, okay. Not a second thought.
Yeah, you're still laser focused. I got you.
Right. And then the next day, I'm at home. This is a Saturday. And I go home, and I get a call, and it's Chris and Mike, his best friend, which is Kara's boyfriend at the time. And they're like, hey, there's a party. We lived in Indianapolis, so it was race weekend, Indianapolis 500 weekend. Hey, we're having a party. Do you guys want to come over? Do you want to come to the party? There's, all these people I'd met the night before. I'm like, well, I don't really party, but okay. And so we go to the party, and it's funny. We go, it's Broad Ripple. It was this little town, and just on the outskirts of Indianapolis or wherever, or a suburb, whatever you call it. And I walk in, and this kid, Jason, and it's his mom and dad's house, and there's all these people sitting around the table. I'm not a heathen.
You don't have to defend
all these people sitting around a table just playing drunkards games or whatever. And Chris
drinking games.
Drinking
I think they're
games,
called.
Yeah. And he has an IV in his hand, and I'm sitting at the table, and I'm not drinking, and he's not drinking because he has but everyone else was. And I'm like, what's up with this? That was fascinating to me. How are you out of the hospital doing this? And, so across the table, the games are going on. So we just kind of played games with everybody else. Like, we were the sober ones, and everyone else was being stupid.
Yeah.
And when you're 20 years old. Huh? Yeah, 20 years old, 21 years old.
Okay.
So that's how we met. And then we talked the rest of the night. And then I get a call the next day, and he's like, we're cooking out at my house. Would you want to come over and meet, my mom and dad or whatever, and have the cookout or whatever? I'm like, sure. I'm like, but I have church in the morning.
Yes.
So it was a late night, but I get up, I go to church and then afterwards I drive I'm the West Side girl. He's the East Side boy.
Oh, okay.
So drive across town, and then it was every day after that we were together.
Just hit it off.
It was just as simple as that.
Just became right
his mom and dad were amazing, and his friends were all nice. His best friend at the time and Kara, just spent a lot of time together, and we would go canoeing and pushing me so far beyond the limits of what I had ever known. Wow. Okay. Bringing the suburb city girl into the country, because all of them were from Kentucky and spent the summers on the holler.
Yeah, in Kentucky, folk.
In Kentucky, yes. So
I know some of those people.
Yeah, right. So that's our story, and that was 1992.
I love that.
And then, through a course of events, I got kicked out of my house by my dad.
Did
we drove my sister to Texas, and I came home in end of October to all my stuff in my driveway.
Tell me about this.
My dad had a hard time having the 2 grandbabies and a daughter leave.
Okay. So he was not in full agreement with the
Correct.
Texas thing.
He didn't like the East Side boy taking
and
his
he didn't
daughter
like
to
the
tennis,
East Side boy
to
taking
That Kentucky boy over there,
the
huh?
girl, his good girl that I just walked the line. I've always just walked the line.
you always have. That's what you've said.
And because I wanted to please.
Mm.
Knew my path. And he knew I was on the path to do what I had set out to do.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't want it changed.
He didn't want it changed.
Mm.
So he was protecting his girl. So
he saw that changing a little bit, maybe. With this.
And just, I was still living at home, going to school full time. I worked 2 jobs. Keep me on my path.
Yeah.
That's what a dad does.
Yes. Yeah. Had a right heart.
Yeah. Just executed it the wrong way.
Yeah.
I'd say.
So, and he can get into that part with my dad.
Sure.
But came home and we ended up, I said we were sinners. We ended up, his mom and dad said, stay with us.
Mm-hmm.
And then we ended up getting an apartment together. Sinner. And this is my senior year of college.
Mm-hmm.
So, but then that was November it was my junior year. So that was November, got through the school year. And then, I guess it was February, we started looking at houses, and cause he was in school, I was in school, and we ended up buying a house. And by the time we got married, September of a little while later, we had bought a house.
Mm.
We were committed to each other. We were engaged to be married. And it was just getting me through school, getting him through school, and mending relationships. And by the time all that happened, my dad and him we had all reconnected in the right way and realized he was for my good, not for evil. And they ended up becoming the best of son-in-law and dad. So
I appreciate you sharing. I know that you don't love it because you are someone who just walks the straight and narrow, and as you've said, you always have. Yeah. But the fact that there were moments where you made choices that maybe weren't always in line with what everybody felt like you should do, but God was with you in all of that. Definitely. And it makes you so human, makes you so normal, and you call yourself a sinner. I call you human, and we all have those moments. And today, I need Jesus. So I tease you sometimes. I think you're hard on yourself because people actually resonate more with our weaknesses. And to hear a story in the human side of the church leaders here in our house actually helps people to realize that we're part of the same journey.
Most definitely.
If not for the grace of God, where would we be? Yep. And so you sharing, hey, this, might not have gone by the book.
Right.
Even according to your dad, right? Yeah. But it shaped you, and God had his hand on you through the midst of that, and you've come out, an amazing woman of God and someone who, I value and I'm friends with. So I appreciate you being willing to share. I can sense in you how uncomfortable at times it can make you to talk about these things. So I just want to tell you I was proud of you for doing that. Well, Chris, you've sat, you've listened, you've heard. Let's come over to the country boy, the good old boy. And you know what I love so far about her talking about you is that your first moments of winning your wife-to-be over where you brought her to a cookout, which seems so appropriate for Chris Palmer. And because if you know him, and some of you do, you're the guy who cooks all the time. You're one of the best cooks. You actually helped cook for my son's rehearsal dinner for his wedding recently. So I just found that so funny that was your first moment. Was
his family are amazing cooks.
Yeah,
like he got it honestly, and that was just not part of my upbringing.
That's so fun. So tell me about your start. Tell me where you were born, where you grew up. What was that like? Again, good, bad, and ugly with your family.
We'll be gentle.
Yeah, well, I mean, you say what you feel comfortable with saying, but again, I think it helps people to get to know you and to resonate with that. And so take me back to the beginning of Chris Palmer. Where were you born? What was life like?
Brought up east side of Indianapolis.
Okay.
Always kid. We say it was the hood.
Okay.
It wasn't. We didn't think it was that bad.
Okay.
When we were young, obviously. But I think anybody, when you leave and you go back, it's probably quite a bit different than you anticipated or you thought, I guess. So, but east side of Indianapolis, not the greatest of neighborhoods. I spent the summers in Kentucky. The day after school and the day before school started is when I came back and I So
Jackson, Kentucky.
Yeah.
Okay.
So way back in the holler.
Yeah.
I mean, it took 45 minutes to an hour to get to.
Now, who were you with there?
I was
Kentucky?
with my mother's brother.
Okay.
My Uncle David and his wife. And then once in a while, I would go to Fort Wayne to her youngest brother to spend time with them. So it's always been,
right?
yes, and my grandma's lived there.
Were you working on a farm? You just hanging out with the country folk?
A little bit of each, I think it was. You know, it's you're so far in the middle of nothing. I mean, it's woods and garden.
Yep.
I mean, that's there is nothing else. So family. I even in school, everything was family. I've always been more of a family person, hang out with my family more than I would rather go to quote unquote parties or hang out with guys. I think it probably wasn't until, I don't know, my best friend Ron, which you met, we are.
He makes you look tiny.
Yes. Exactly, which is hard.
They talk every day, too, still to this day,
so
every single day.
It's funny that we were watching a football game last night, weren't we? And there was a guy coming off, and they said he was about 6'3", 318 pounds or something. And I looked at him, and I looked over at her, and I said,
"There's no way."
308. I said, "I'm 10 pounds heavier than he is." I said, "He ain't fooling me. That guy, bro, I ain't that big, but maybe I was. I don't know."
Yeah.
So when we stayed with your family, it's you become comfortable with your family. So I think that's why family to me was always more than friends. But if you're a friend, then you are a family. I've always told the doors are always open, and you treat them like your family. I mean, so I think that's probably, that gets pounded into you and you believe it.
Sure.
That shaped him.
Yeah. It was always family.
You are a very loyal guy.
Very much so.
Yeah, I mean, having a friend for that long is proof of that. You are, which I think that is some of your country roots, country people, because like you said, it's kind of a survival. We got to be together to make it through this stuff. You exhibit that very much so. You're very loyal.
Try to be.
Yes.
It's hard. It's funny that I always listen to him. He goes, "I don't know how you allow things to just run off your back the way you do. The things that come up, the way certain things happen or have done, and you just, it's always been told to me, it would never happen. I could never do it. You just say, I just, if I can't control it mentally or physically, I don't care about it. I really, truly don't. Yeah. And I think that's been, again, it's pressed in, and it's part of your family. You just, I mean, it is what it is.
Some of it's your personality. Like your personality, you very stoic in nature. Like you just said, if it's out of my control, then I have to release that. And, people pray a long time for the fruit of the spirit of self-control, my friend. And you have seemed to embody that very well. So,
I'm very thankful and blessed with that. Yeah. The older I get, the more you realize it. But I think it's deep in there somewhere. And there's some things that you don't have Sure. I mean, I think that you give up, that maybe, you trade.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the right word, but I think that's probably one of the things that I love the most.
Now, you say you're close to family. Did you have siblings growing up?
No siblings other than myself. Yeah.
Okay.
His mom said after him that
was it.
enough.
You were
he
enough.
was a big baby.
I broke the mold, baby.
He had hip dysplasia in both hips, so he was in a cast till he was 9 months old.
Really?
Yeah, they break they reset your,
and then
basically
set
from
and
your
cast.
feet to your hips.
Okay.
So you got a hip, or you got a cast all the way up to basically your ribs.
Yeah.
That's how he learned to crawl.
So, yeah.
I believe Pastor Benjamin's daughter had something similar to this. I don't know the exacts of that, but I remember her having to wear a cast like that when she was younger.
His mom said that's probably why he's as broad, because he would learn to crawl by army crawling. So his upper body
pull
is
yourself
so
across
big.
the floor with a cast on when you're.
that makes that kind of bulldog build, doesn't it?
Makes those bones grow a little bigger than maybe they should have. Right.
So you're growing up, you're in the country during the summer times, and you said you're in the hood. What does that feel and look like for you? Elementary student, high school student. What were your passions? What were you into?
Football.
Football. Rightfully so.
I liked football.
Okay.
I probably wasn't, I don't guess, great at it. I remember my coach always saying, when I was my very first couple years, I was fullback.
Okay.
And I always remember him, the coach is in the huddle with you, and they're going, okay, we're going to do a 23 dive.
Okay.
And I would always look at him and go, what am I supposed to do? And he was going, you're the 3-back. You have to go to this hole.
Yeah.
You hit somebody that's got a different colored shirt. So
He heard
every
the word
play,
hit.
I would always have to ask him where I went. Don't you study? Don't you study? Don't you look at your plays or whatever? And I always remember going, they don't mean anything to me. I don't, they always are just crazy looking.
Okay.
So I would always have to ask. And, years later, it still happens. But it was great because, when you struggle like that, you got to work harder to get better at something.
Okay.
So it's always been, I think, a thing that you can put forth in life. So, sports, academics, anything. So you got to work at something to get better. Yeah. So as we get to high school, I guess I make the excuse that there wasn't a way for me to get to summer football, even though I wanted to play.
Okay.
I got my next door neighbor to take me to the first practice in summer, and I was going to enjoy it. And then his mother said, you're not going to have anybody in the car, blah, blah, blah. So I stopped.
Lost your ride, okay.
Yeah. So it got, you get in high school and you get led in maybe a little bit different direction than maybe some of the guys that you were in the neighborhood. A couple of guys from the neighborhood played NFL.
Oh, really?
And they were good. A lot of the guys that
Blaine Bishop?
I played football with were, quote unquote, high school stars.
Okay.
I didn't think they were that good, frankly. I didn't.
Yeah.
I was better than they were.
Yeah.
But they were better because they did what they were supposed to do.
Gotcha.
So that's where, but I think you have to get in your mind where anything that is a problem, you try to overcome.
He's not a studier.
Yeah.
He doesn't enjoy reading.
Yeah.
He would tell me, because I'm like, that studying was
that is an opposite
so totally
there, right?
different. And he would say, I'd carry my backpacks around, one for a weapon. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like, why would you need a weapon in your high school? Like, as your backpack to protect yourself?
This is
40-pound.
But I
rock.
like this innocent girl, like so.
Yeah.
Never around any violence in school or anything like that to someone I meet. I'm like, I don't understand that. So it's
Muncie to
fascinating.
Indianapolis is a different world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I grew up in Brownsburg, so it was different, but mine was the culture was quite different.
Yeah.
The rough side to the suburb side.
Okay.
That's probably where her father got that.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, he's from the east side. Where on the east side? Oh goodness. Anyway,
Now, did you have friends and stuff there? You hung out with a group of people?
There was a few guys that I hung around with. Again, still today, we speak.
That's great.
I think there's probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 guys that we still talk.
Okay.
And that's about it, really.
Yeah.
I mean, the circle is small.
Yeah. Now, you didn't grow, now she was growing up, and part of that was a pretty big church environment or Christian environment. Did you didn't have that or had a little bit?
My mother, I remember, really disliked church. I did. And my mother, for no other reason, because I didn't get to watch sports or go play.
Gotcha.
On Sunday.
Yeah, you want to be outside playing or watching football. Yeah.
I remember my mother taking me to church, and I just have never been able to sit still. I mean, she is telling me even today, stop shaking or whatever have you. And I remember I was just going crazy in service, and I said, I gotta go, get me out of here. I'm not gonna stay. I mean, what 9-year-old tells their mother that you're not. I don't want to.
Yeah.
And she folded.
Wow.
You know what I mean, so I basically got what I wanted when I wanted it, and because I wanted it.
You only children.
It was me. Yeah, exactly.
He has stories about his mom took the bike away, and he'd ask his dad. He'd be riding the bike when she came home. She's like, "What are you doing?" Well, Dad said, "What?"
Exactly.
Only the only child kind of stories.
Yeah.
He got away with all.
Yeah, it was, but it was, it is what it is.
Sure. So you didn't really do the whole church thing because you couldn't sit there and you couldn't watch football.
No,
and
I would
but they
rather
were trying to get you to go,
something.
which that sounds good.
Yes, trying to get me to go, but there again, Amanda tried for. Oh my goodness!
I would ask 20 years. Every single time I went to church.
So let's talk about this. So you meet her in college. She kind of gave a story.
She voo-vooed over me, and I.
She couldn't help but be drawn to your
my magnetic magnetism. The bad boy.
I said misery, not mystery. It's the mystery in his eyes drew me in.
Yeah, you guys, she of course gets kicked out. You're moving in together, and slowly, you start to win over the families. But talk to me about those early years of marriage and life together, because this is always intriguing to me because I know you now.
Yes,
and I didn't know you then.
Right.
That church was not something you would want to go do with her, which this is straight-laced, by the book, young lady marries bad boy from the east side. All right, it's like a movie. And now she's trying to get you to go to church. Yeah. What is your home like? What was your first years of marriage like?
They were right before she got kicked out.
Okay.
I was asked by her sister to take drive the moving truck to Tennessee, or I don't want to say Texas.
Yeah.
Texas. So I said, yeah. I thought that'd be cool. I've been to Texas.
Yeah.
And he had met my mom and dad and my grandparents, everyone at this point. He had met everybody, and we were all.
So
it was all good.
I said, yeah. So I think we were going to leave that Thursday or Friday or whatever.
Okay.
And I believe it was a Monday or Tuesday, first of the week. And I was working on a dock unloading semis. And I'm doing my stuff. I'm doing my paperwork here after I unloaded the truck. And I look up and I see this policeman standing in front of me.
That would be my
dad. And I'm
dad.
thinking to myself,
okay. So your dad was a police officer.
Yeah.
Okay.
My past is coming back to get me, right? And I looked, and it was, and I looked up, I looked down, I looked back up, and I went, oh, that's Amanda's dad.
Wow.
And I leaned back in my chair, being a cocky
21-year-old.
Yeah.
22-year-old.
And he starts telling me what was going to happen, what wasn't going to happen. Well, as you can imagine, that didn't go over very well.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Policeman or
anybody.
Any way it goes. So we had a little discussion, and it set me in motion to say, oh, I'm so going to Texas this week. This is going to be fun.
Yeah.
So when we got back,
natural bucking of the system.
Yes, exactly. Right. So we get back and you pull up and you see all of her stuff in
And there was threats, like before we left.
Before,
like,
during,
if you
don't,
leave,
how dare you?
The state police are going to,
Yes.
just my dad. It was like a mid-life crisis. Probably.
Well, he was trying to stop something he didn't think was right.
Right,
Yes, exactly.
And I'm
maybe
like,
some
you know me,
extremes.
Dad. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to do stupid stuff. We're going to call you along the way in our bag cell phone. It was
He wasn't
before
going for that.
iPhone.
He didn't
He
go
wasn't
for
going
that.
for that.
Well, that
He
boy from
wasn't.
East Side.
Right.
So it was opening when you get back
Yeah.
to see to me, and you're going, how do you kick your daughter out for taking your other daughter and moving them because you couldn't or wouldn't?
Yeah.
So I mean, I didn't understand. All I knew is you don't treat your family like that. You don't turn your back on them.
Yeah,
That's
which would
not
be the
what you
opposite
were
of the
supposed
way
to do.
you
Yes.
had been living.
Right.
Exactly.
Family's very tight.
So
oh,
I
okay.
I wasn't gonna have it.
Yeah.
So
You went to protective mode for
yeah.
me.
So as I always say, you poke the bear, you know what happens.
That's right. Yeah.
So I think it basically started off that way, and then it continued for a bit, and then you come out again. Duck off water's back, as Ron always. I always tell Ron. You know what I mean? So it got better, and you just start. You forgive, and you just move on. So marriage was it was quite rough, wasn't it? We would bouncing checks for food on purpose. You like all young
Safeway
kids.
grocery
when you
store.
first start,
You figure out what you got to do when you got to do
We'd
it. how
pay
you're
it
gonna
as
do it.
like the next day, but it's like, hey, we'd write a check. That's when you could write checks, $300, and we filled up the thing. When you're living on shepherd's pie, mashed potatoes, corn, and hamburger, you'd live on. Okay, I'll throw cheese on it if we had it. Scrape the mold off part of the bag.
Yeah.
And just that struggle. So, but it was us too. And his mom and dad were amazing. And my mom and dad have always been amazing, and my grandparents, but it made us rely on each other completely.
Wow.
So I
Like,
think that
okay, we have
builds
mom and dad, and we have mom and dad.
It builds your it builds your character and your foundation, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So as it's funny not knowing the Bible, right?
Yeah.
And you hear stories of you build on the rock.
Yeah.
You don't build anywhere else.
Yeah.
So you look and you go, I think it was in he was working then
Oh, yeah.
and not knowing it.
Because I would still be going to church and do stuff. And don't get me wrong, he wasn't saved, but he would go to church with me here and there. Did he enjoy it? Probably not so much. He'd rather be watching Sunday football.
He couldn't
but
sit still like when he was a 9-year-old boy. Yeah.
And we went to Lakeview Christian. It was a very, very large church, a couple thousand a service. I mean, it was huge.
Too many people for me.
Too many people for him. That's all I knew because that's what I grew up for years and years when we lived in Indiana going to. And I went because that's where all my family went. Like, where else am I supposed to go? So I was too immature to go, well, let me try something else that might work better for him. I was just like, here's where I'm going.
Yeah.
And he would go with me at times and stuff. But, early in our marriage, we miscarried babies and we were still, I was in nursing, or I was out of nursing school at this point, got a job, but it was just so many things that
Hard times.
Like
Challenges,
my senior year in nursing school, we were married. I had miscarried twice in 6 months.
Wow.
His dad had a massive, he stroked bilaterally, lived a year and 9 months, and then passed away.
Wow.
So all of this was within a year and a half of marriage. And it's like, oh God, what are you doing to me? Okay, I know he doesn't go to church, but please, praying. Like, I prayed for babies because I thought, okay, you're married. That's what you're supposed to do is have babies. And so it was just like challenge after challenge after challenge. And, but man, he just saw us through, even when I'm like, help me with him.
Yeah.
And he was helping me with him.
He
He was
was.
helping
You
me
just
get
didn't know
through
it,
that. I
right?
just didn't.
Sure.
But and the thing is, and I always say, I'm not a fighter. I cry. But I'm not a yeller. I'm not a puncher. I don't.
But you remember when she went to the doctor, one of the first brain surgeries, and when she, we'll go back, but one of her first miscarriages, and again, not being more the family guy, not necessarily the Bible guy, and you say, I think, what do you say? What's a guy doesn't understand, right? I mean, anything we say is probably not the thing that we're supposed to say.
Yeah.
But I remember saying the one thing that always stuck into my mind was, things happen for a reason. There's a reason why.
Wow.
He got me a plaque that said that.
There's a reason why things happen. We don't yet understand why, but at the right time, we'll know.
Wow.
And lo and behold, what the doctor tells us one of the first times before surgery.
It was the first time meeting the neurosurgeon, which we can get to that stuff. But he said,
died.
If I would have had a baby, it would have killed me or paralyzed me. And I actually shared that with the kids yesterday.
Yes, exactly.
Wow. So you didn't really have faith, but you're speaking to a faith that you eventually will grab a hold of. So it was the reality that God was working. You didn't maybe have the language Bible-wise to go, there's a reason God is doing this, but you just knew there was a reason.
There's
for
always
things.
a strong of knowing something, someone, something.
Yeah.
Other than who cares or So it's that, and then as you get older and things start coming together, you're just like, I knew.
Yeah.
There was something, but I wasn't sure quite
or willing to understand
or willing to accept.
Yeah, I think, and like you've said, from the get-go, God was working to bring you about, and it was your journey, which I think is special, and I do want to come back to your journey, but I do want to maybe veer off and hear about the health and stuff. People need to know that. But how different journeys are. You know, even you two, the trajectory, your faith journey specifically, so unique and so different that I think that's one of the things, though, that I love about a body of believers is the unique nature in which people find their way to the Lord. And it's just so perfect for them. Like, you wouldn't have been able to resonate at the depth you are now with the Lord and your faith journey had it not come through the way it's come through for you. And that's what I love. And I love the testimony, too, because then there's others that have maybe similar that go, okay, I'm not as crazy as I thought I was. You know, Chris had a similar thing going on. Yeah. And so that's what the power of these kind of conversations has. Let's come back to your health journey. Okay. And some people might not know some of that. Again, I don't want to, dive into too much privacy. I want you to share what you feel comfortable with, but you have had quite a journey with challenges physically, which has impacted your ability to have children and things like that. Would you mind sharing a little bit of how that's been shaping you and your walk with the Lord and who you are as a woman?
So being 53 years old, my first surgery was 19 years old.
Okay.
But I always, even from a young age, my mom reminds me of this. She's like, I always had belly issues. And she took me to the doctor and they're like, she will probably have some kind of gut issues her whole life. Like back in the 70s, they didn't know they didn't diagnose things like they did now. Yeah. So I always struggled with certain things, and even through high school, girl issues, and then my first surgery had an appendix the size of a baseball. And then it went from there to a lot of female issues. So I would have stuff where I would be on medication that would shut my system down for months at a time and put me through menopause at the age of 19. And then stop. I would bleed for months on end. I would get anemic. They would have to do surgery, shut me down again. So it was just that cycle. So when we met, I was going through, basically I was in menopause at the age of 20. So that happened off and on for years, and they couldn't understand why all of endometriosis and all this stuff was happening. So fast forward, then lose 4 pregnancies, and that's with infertility and, all of the process we went through. And we finally said, we're done with this. I had a hysterectomy at the age of 30. Wow. And that was begging the doctors to do it. And then, so that was 2001. We actually started and went through fostering kids and had two twin boys and a little girl in our home.
Wow.
Then the foster mom said, you know what? We've raised them. We changed our mind. We want to adopt them. And being the new people in their life, they took them from us. Yeah. And it was devastating.
Sure.
And I did it, and part of it, he had an unease about it. And then physically, like, I just felt like I was supposed to have kids. And just all the things kept going away. So after my hysterectomy, we were doing literally like a month after I met these kids. Well, then as the year went on of 2002, I thought I had a brain tumor. And I was working as a nurse, and I worked nights, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., and I passed out at work. And I'm like, what is going on with me? Did an MRI, didn't have a brain tumor, but had what my sister had been diagnosed with a year and a half before. So it's called Arnold-Chiari malformation. It's a form of spina bifida.
Okay.
And it's where the base of the brain collapses into the spinal column and it blocks the flow of fluid.
Wow.
So then, and I was born that way. It didn't just happen. But my dad, being a Vietnam vet, exposed to Agent Orange.
Wow.
So that's where a lot of my story comes in. But that's a whole nother process or part of the conversation.
Sure,
but
sure.
So come 03, so it's been over a year. In July of 03, actually was on my birthday, I told my family, I have what Carrie has. And my mom and dad just were like, what? Like, because my sister had already had 2 open brain surgeries.
Wow.
And we knew it was a really hard diagnosis. But I was so different than my sister in the way we presented our symptoms. I just had a neck ache. And so this is July. Come September, we go to the doctor in New York. That's where the specialists are. And the first thing, he's like, have you had infertility? Yes. Do you have this, this, and this? And I walked out of there with 7 diagnoses. Neurogenic bladder, seromyelia, that's where pockets of fluid form. It took up 90% of my spinal column. I couldn't even sleep without being on 6 pillows, or I felt like I was suffocating.
Holy cow.
God is so good. But in that meeting, Dr. Bolognese, and again, we were there for weeks, a couple weeks. They didn't want me to come home. They're like, you are so serious.
Yeah.
We don't want you to go home. And I'm like, I have to go home and get things in order and then come back. So that was September. We came home for a short bit, and then I had surgery October 4th. But that first thing, Dr. B said, if you would have had babies, it would have killed your parents. In that moment, all the doubt gone.
So good.
And I'm emotional because as women, we bear such a burden. One, to please other people with children. Some women are not called to have kids.
Come on.
They're called to love kids, but maybe not hold them and birth them. And I didn't understand that. And then in that moment, it was just never again did I bear that burden of why couldn't I do that for him?
Wow.
And it was so sweet because he said, I'd rather have you alive than have a kid without you. Or have that responsibility and you not be here.
Wow.
And it's like, God, you gave me the right man. Because and I even told him, because there was so much stuff walking out of there, like, how am I going to do this? I'm like, I know how God's going to carry me through, like he always has. And to have a man go, it doesn't matter, I want you healthy. Whatever we have to do, this is what we're going to do. And my family my mom and dad just rallied and flew out and had surgery. I was there in the hospital a long time. I had some complications, but a month in New York, away from a job, away from all this stuff. My mom and dad there. I'm like, oh, but he provided. I mean, just everything. How are we going to pay for the mortgage? He provided that. Like, so through all of that, that was the biggest health hurdle. And I'm like, if I can get through a 14-hour brain surgery and 2 weeks in the hospital, complications, I can do anything. I came home and I'm like, I look like Frankenstein. I literally had half my head shaved. I have a scar from the top of my head to C7. And I'm like, I feel like Superwoman. I mean, I can do anything. If I can get through this,
How many surgeries have you had?
I've had 32 total.
32 total.
So
surgeries.
we were in a car accident 10 weeks post-op. I was supposed to go back. I was doing so good. Supposed to go back to work the following week. This was a Friday. Got rear-ended, knocked me back 5 months. Had to have another surgery. And this was months of physical therapy, just going through stuff. Had to wear a neck brace. For basically a year. I mean, it's just one thing after the other, but went back to nursing, had limitations, but still loved what I did. I worked with babies and laboring moms and all that. But then it shifted me after my second brain surgery. I did bereavement, working with moms who lose babies. And that changed me as well.
Okay.
Realizing in people that had women that had spontaneous abortions, but also elective abortions. And I'm like, that shifted everything. I can't judge. All I can do is love and pray for them and help them through, because I've walked through a lot. I haven't walked through an elective or whatever, but man, it just changed everything about me. And then fast forward a couple more years, I had a spine surgery. That was one of my diagnoses, tethered cord. It's like the base of your spinal cord becomes frayed like a bad electric cord. So I had like foot drop and just a lot of bowel issues because where it affects you. And had the surgery, did really well, came home, fractured the half of a vertebrae I had left completely in half. Spent 5 months at a brace. He was literally picking me up, taking me to the bathroom, bringing me back to the couch. And then had a second surgery, woke up, and I'm like, I remember being in the neuro ICU. I had to be there an extra day. They didn't have a bed. And friends of ours Ron and Jenny had come up. Okay. And when they finally moved me to the room, they joked because I was on pain meds and my gown opened up in the back and I mooned everybody. But like, anyways, that's the funny part of it. But like, God did something in me then, a healing. It was crazy. It was 2008. My dad is dying. I have surgery February 23rd. My dad dies 6 weeks later. Brenna Kay, our great niece, is born 2 months and a day later. I have surgery 3 months later. I lose my job. This is all 2008. But January I applied. I get disability. God, I knew in that time of my second surgery, God's going to handle everything. But I lose everything I thought I was supposed to be, nurse. That goes away.
Wow.
I lose my dad. That goes away. Blessed with Brenna. She was the light in all the darkness. Get approved for disability. God was there through every single bit.
So good. That's so good, Amanda.
Like, and even in so much pain. Like, God is so good to me.
Yes.
He's so good. I have a man that loves me, and he's not saved yet, but he's taking care of me. I don't have my dad, but I have so many people around that took care of me.
You are definitely a superwoman. And that's what I wanted people to hear, because they don't get to know all that, you know, the things you've come through. And this is true of everyone. Like, we don't know everybody's story, right? How many people are coming into our congregation that have been through so much? And
you don't see my scars.
Yeah, you don't see the scars unless you shaved your head, you know? And so please don't do that.
And I even showed the kids, like, my head scars. They're like, what? And I'm like, I don't even have part of my skull back there. I have a titanium mesh plate. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of like a superhero, right?
Yes,
and they're like, yeah.
You are.
But it's like, through all of the turmoil and all of that, he just molded me because it's before church was online and doing all that stuff in 08 and into 09. And like, he was just shaping me for something more. And like, so fast forward a little more to 2011 and he was just stirring in me. I was finally getting back to some normalcy of life. And Christmas of 11, we go to Tennessee. I'm like, and we got married in Tennessee. I'm like, I won't ever move to a place like that. He's so funny.
Isn't it funny when you tell
he's so funny.
God,
yeah.
I'm not going to do something?
And we moved to Tennessee January 27th of 2012. And again, he's not saved. I'm like tithing. I'm going to church. I'm so involved. I'm in prayer shawl ministry. I'm like,
been through so much.
Been through so much. Like
strong.
it's whatever.
Yeah.
And wearing that S underneath my shirt. Like, super warm. But we moved to Tennessee with $750 to our name. Yeah, wow. And like, all right, Lord, because that song Refuse was out. I can't remember who sings it, but I refuse to, I refuse, whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, to me, it was like, I'm going to stop refusing to do. And I felt that stirring. So when I'm like, all right, we came back from Christmas, I'm like, let's do it. We signed a contract, sent it, faxed it, whatever. We moved 3 weeks later. Wow. All my people in Brownsburg were like, what are you doing? My best friend of 30 some years, she's like, why are you leaving? What are you doing? I'm like, because God's calling me to just do something different for my marriage, for me. I went to 7 different churches in the area. I'm like, and finally, on the 8th week, I'm like, I'm going to Sweetwater First Assembly. And it was 15, 20 minutes away from where the rental house we were in. And that morning he wakes up and he goes with me. Before I asked, no, I'm good. That morning I didn't ask. He just got up, and I'll let him tell that story.
Yeah. So you go to church that morning with her, the one she's picked at Sweetwater. How does that go? Because I believe you have an encounter.
we went in. I think we were there for first service, maybe. Yeah. I think it was maybe, I don't know. It wasn't very long. We weren't there very long. And, of course, he had his call for baptisms.
Salvation first. Yeah.
Thank you. And I just rose my hand. I was like, okay, it's time.
Yeah.
And I was oblivious. I had no idea.
So you didn't see him?
I had no idea.
My eyes were closed.
So
I had
he's
no
like, hey,
idea.
I'm choosing Jesus today. And you had no idea.
I didn't say anything to anybody.
Yeah.
It was just, you know what I mean? Which is, there again, just right hand should know what the left hand is doing. Right?
Yeah.
Just,
it's typical you. It sounds like
right.
you.
Oh,
and then all of a sudden you're doing what?
Well, after service, he's talking to Pastor Andrew, and his wife came up and introduced herself.
Sure.
And I'm like, I said, I just love the feel of this. I said, instantly I walked in, it feels like home to me.
Praise
and Rachel was just like, I love that. And, they gave out gifts for first time and he's talking. I'm like, oh, that's nice. Like thinking first time here. And again, I had no idea he raised his hand. Like, he's talking to the pastor. Like, this is just weird. It's taking me on a weird journey right now.
Yes.
And we get a block away, and I drove a 1965 AMC Rambler wagon.
Okay.
That was my daily driver. And I'm toting along in my blue wagon, and we're a block away. And he's like, well, in 2 weeks, something big's going to happen. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I'm going to get baptized. And I literally turned into the Kmart parking lot.
Do you really? That's fantastic.
And I'm literally like, I'm calling my mom on my flip phone, like going, Mom, he did it. He said yes.
She's
I was
got everybody we
crying
know in Tennessee coming to the church for baptism.
Yeah. So 2 weeks later, the whole row, because his family had moved from Kentucky to Tennessee, there were 2 rows taken up.
Sure.
Of people coming to support Chris Palmer in his journey.
Yes, and I thought she was big. My Uncle David was like,
because he loved the Lord.
Yeah.
He loved the Lord.
Wow.
He was a prayer warrior.
Everybody's brother.
But so
amazing.
One, wives, don't stop praying for your husband.
Don't ever stop praying for your husbands.
That's so
ever.
good.
Don't do it. And kids, don't stop praying for your parents.
Come on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But that's the story. Like
Most
you would
definitely.
think, like honestly, I'm listening.
20
I'm going,
years.
I would think Chris would have picked here, or Chris would have said, okay, God, here, okay, God, here.
Yeah.
Right. All the stuff you lived
Right.
through, all the moments he's been with you. And it was a journey, but there was the right moment for you,
right.
Chris. And that's why I think is encouraging for someone listening that there's a right moment for
Exactly.
their loved one to, and, just the sweetness of that moment for you as a wife and the reward of those years of praying and testimony. And you just, there was no major thing. It just resonated with you. Said, today's the day. I'm choosing the Lord today. That's as simple as
like
it was.
an out of body experience.
Yep.
I mean, all of a sudden you just raise your hand.
Yeah.
Just like when you're on the pulpit here and you're going, we're going to give a few seconds.
Yeah.
Everybody open your eyes and everybody look around and see which person is going to raise their hand.
Yeah.
And people, I don't think they know that they're going to raise their hand.
Sure.
It's just they're sitting there and all of a sudden,
Yeah.
their hand goes up and they're like,
I mean, I was 8, so I don't
crazy
really
at their
remember
hands.
that.
Yeah. That
and
But for him, like,
if you can
so
be honest,
special.
you look at the people, and I think the look on their faces, they
I'm
don't
going.
even they didn't realize they raised their hand, right? Until they're kind of looking. You're looking at them, going, "Man, they all got the same look on their face when they raised their hand for the very first
I
time."
love
Today's
that.
the
I
day.
didn't ever know you thought that way.
Wow.
I love that perspective.
Yeah, that's so good. So let me just real quick, and there's so much more we need to
I
talk
know,
about. This
I
is going to be
know.
like so many conversations with you two because of your cool story. But you actually, out of all this that we've been hearing, go into ministry. You start serving in Sweetwater under amazing pastors
Yep.
there. And then the Lord brings you here. What I'd like to just kind of cap this conversation with is that
Yeah.
your call into ministry, your love for the kids, as both of you. The Lord shaped you as a nurturer from the very beginning, from your niece to all of that, and but then said, okay, you might not have kids in your home, but I'm going to give you a bunch of kids.
That's right.
So walk us through that journey of God calling you into some of that ministry.
So diving into, especially after he said yes, like
Yeah.
I knew the importance of small groups and getting connected.
So
like,
true.
Because that's
Listen to
just
that,
I've always, that was just part of me. But for him, I'm like, that's what we have to do. So we got onto the food ministry team there.
Yeah.
But I started serving in kids ministry, one, because of desperation.
Yep.
And Kristen Moorhead, I'll have to tell her I mentioned her on this. She was like, I need your help in
Yeah.
toddlers.
Which,
And I'm
by the
like,
way, we always need help.
yes, we
in
always
kids
need help.
ministry.
I'll wave the
So
white flag.
If
Help.
you are listening to
Yes.
this, we want you.
Yes,
we need the
you.
other
And
Amanda
it's not-
Palmers.
And I,
It's not
I
difficult.
I don't
Yes.
need you. The children
Come on.
of Lift
There
Church
you go.
need you.
That's so good. Yes.
It's not Amanda's ministry. It's God's ministry and Lift Kids
Come on.
ministry,
for your
and these
children.
kids
Amen,
need
girl.
you.
So well
and
said.
so that's what I served that day. And remember, I had back issues, so I'm like getting on the floor with toddlers. And I'm like, this is so
Wow.
not the age group
Yeah.
for me. It's just like, that's okay. I'm like, but I like the thought of serving. So I went to elementary down in the downstairs, the kids zone.
Quote.
And I fell in love with it.
Yeah.
I'm like, these kids, like, you have elementary boys like farting and doing this stuff. And I'm like, where have you taken me? But then the girls like on their knees praying and like loving the Lord from I remember being them.
Yeah.
And like having such a passion, that fire, you always say, like, for the Lord, like that burn, like I remember having that at 8. So just being part of it and seeing that growth and that transition in kids, like it is so cool to watch when they finally get it. Like
You were
it's
hooked.
just, it totally hooked me. And I went to kids camp. So,
Yeah.
and when we come to that this year, that's one of my goals for Lift Kids
I love
Ministry
that.
is to take kids to camp this coming year of 2025.
Yeah.
That changes kids' lives, but it changed my life. So a couple years into going to camp, I hear the voice of the Lord, say yes. And I'm like, it's the last day. I'm like, I don't know what that means, but okay.
Yeah,
And so it's put in, the nugget of my brain. And a couple months later, we get back and like you fly on that high of kids camp. Like everyone is just so ramped up and pumped. And then the Moorheads got called to be lead pastors. And
which were the kids' pastors?
They were the kids. He was youth and she was kids.
Yeah, okay.
And they were a dynamic duo. And so Pastor Andrew said, hey, come in to the church. You know, I want to talk with you. And Drew and Kristen want to talk to you. And I was clueless, like that it was coming. And Drew and Kristen said, we've been called. We got a lead pastor job. I'm like, that's so amazing. Who is taking it? Like, what is going to happen? Like, I'll still serve, but like, what are you going to do? And they're like, well, we're going to pray about it, you know, whatever. I'm like, okay, well then.
There's tricky pastors.
Yeah, tricky. Pastor Andrew calls me in and he's like, well, I've got to ask you a question. I'm like, I don't know like why I'm supposed to say this, but I know at kids camp, I felt something to say yes, and I don't know what that means, but you're saying you have a specific question for me. He gets kind of weepy, and he calls Rachel. Rachel comes in because she was at the church, and she's like, you just confirmed what we've been praying about. I'm like, what are you talking about? And then he said, would you come on to be our kids leader? And of course I start crying because I cry when I'm mad. I cry when I'm happy. That is just me.
Yeah.
And it's a brain issue. Maybe, I don't know. That's what I blame it on.
that. Yeah.
Right. But like that, never did I think I would be a teacher. So not me. I don't like being in front of people. Like I can play and do whatever with the kids, but to get up there and lead, like maybe you chose the wrong person. But then it was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. I had just everything in my being is like, okay, yeah, he told me to say yes, and I'm not going to go against what God whispered in my ear and said to say yes. So it was that, and I did that there for a couple years or whatever, and then COVID happened, and we had been to Israel in 2019 and came home with COVID, and of course the way the church is, everything got shut down and all that. We decided to move after building a house there. We hadn't been in it very long. We prayed about it, fasted in January of 2021, and decided to move to Venice, Florida, which we had been coming down here for years to visit and stuff. We love Venice.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm just going to take a break from ministry. Like, ministry's hard, and it shouldn't be hard. People say, well, it shouldn't be hard. Well, it is when you pour so much into it. Because that's just who I am. It wasn't tiring. It's just hard when there's so much struggle with kids and all this. Like it can weigh on you. I'm like, I'm going to take a break for a little bit, and volunteered to somewhere else. And then it just wasn't the fit, the other church. And my mom and her husband, we came here, and it was 2 weeks before Ian.
Yeah.
And then Hurricane Ian happened and rocked our world. We were out of our house 11 weeks. It's like, what is happening in Florida? I don't know if it's for us or against us. It's feeling like against us. But we jumped in here at Lift, like just serving food. Like we love
That's when
food
we first started having you helping and stuff, was helping serve
and we
food.
love that. And that, for me, I was like, hey, this is cool. Like, we can travel, we can go and do all this stuff and not like be anchored down to do anything. And then Justin happened.
Yeah.
And last year we were actually ready to put our house for Airbnb. Okay. Like we had looked into all of that. We were going to buy our RV and just travel.
Okay. I'm so glad God intervened.
And then Justin, this is so funny. So within 2 days, Pastor Andrew calls. It was hard to leave Sweetwater. Sure, we still have family when we go back, or our church family, like, when are you moving back? I'm like, I won't ever say never, but it's going to be, I don't ever foresee that. It has
to be the Lord. Yeah.
Right. It has to
be
the Lord.
And Micah would fight me.
Right. So anyways, but Pastor Andrew called and said, hey, we're building a new kids building. I had been praying for that building for years. So don't ever stop praying for your church or dreams. You got to dream big and know the Lord's in it. If he's in it, it's going to happen.
Amen.
Period.
Yeah.
If not, it's gonna not look the way you want it to look.
It's not what you'd want anyway. If it's not what he wants.
So he gets called, he accepts a job to Tennessee to help oversee the building of a new children's student ministry building.
Yeah.
2 days later, Justin comes up to me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in being our children's pastor?" I'm like, really, Lord? Like
really,
I bought a map. Like we were planning our journey on doing that.
I didn't even know that.
Oh yeah. Like it's hanging in my hall. Like I have not put a pin in it.
Yeah, don't.
Right. And for me, it was praying about it. Sure, and as a couple, like, what does that look like? Because being early 50s, like we have the ability physically now to still want to go and do and able to do that. And he's like, I feel like I should go and do that with Andrew still, but you really process through, whatever. And so I told Justin yes. And God is just so good. Again, I didn't think at this time of my life I would be with kids, but our lesson for the month was Elijah and Elisha. And yesterday it was God hears your prayers and he's with you. And the gist to the lesson was don't ever stop praying. And he answers prayers, but it may not be in the way that you think it's going to happen. So when Elisha's servant sees the army coming, he prays for God to open his eyes and see,
Yes.
And then for the bad guys, to be blinded and then open their eyes when they're in front, when they take them away. And I shared with the kids, I'm like, I prayed for kids. And I'm very vulnerable with my kids because I want them to know Miss Amanda. I said, I had a green and pink dress on. I'm like, what colors on my dress do you see first? And part of the kids said green and part of the kids said pink roses. I said, and that's kind of how Elisha and the servant and stuff were. They saw things differently. And for me, I thought I was supposed to have kids. And that guy answered. And then I became labor delivery. I said, so I had babies and I got to experience things that happen with childbirth that I would never have been able to if I wasn't a nurse. I said, but now, I said, do you realize God's still answering that same prayer?
Yes.
25 plus years later, that I get kids every single week.
Yeah.
And some of them are new kids. And it's like having just that refreshing again. I said, and I get to love on you and share Jesus with you. Then I send you home to your parents. Like, that is still a prayer every week that gets answered.
Wow.
So seeing that, and the kids love Chrissy. My family calls him Chrissy. He's still answering all of that. Like, I didn't understand it for the longest time, but being in ministry, I'm like, I get tired, I get weary. Like, am I doing it right? And then I see these kids at the altar yesterday.
Yeah, wow.
We had moments. I scattered them across the room. I'm like, just take a moment and pray. Like, what do you need? What are you asking for? What are you praying for in your future? Or if things have been met, what are you thankful for? Like, scatter out and do that. It was just a time of quietness and surrender. And kids are raising their hands, and I'm walking around and I'm praying with kids. From a kid saying, my grandmother, we feel like she has demons in her head. To, I have to go to my dad's this weekend. It's tough. Will you pray for me that, I'm okay when I get there? Or this and that. Like, that is what God has totally called me to do. Like, have all these kids. And that the journey I've walked on with issues with my dad or this or loss or whatever, like, just speaking life into these kids. And as a couple, Chris helped me for service yesterday, and it brings me joy seeing the kids with him.
Sure,
like
they love him.
They hang on him like, Lex hangs on like barbells, and it's like, I don't know how long I'm going to be called to do this, whether it's, a month, a year, or 5 years, whatever he's going to be willing to do that. But it's just who I am. It's part of my DNA now. Like I see kids and I love on them. And I'm thankful I don't have to take them home. I honestly, because I don't, that is just not, that wasn't God's purpose for me. My job and to love and build community and give them a heart for missions for me. That was always a thing. And a heart for giving to others and praying with others. Just everything that my family put into me, and be lucky enough to go to church. There's kids that weren't lucky enough to have that. And even kids that come once a month, just knowing their name and giving them a hug and a high five, and I shared with you early in the week, if you have to do, it's a disciple moment, even when you discipline, if kids are kind of out of sorts and calming them down and doing whatever and instructing them and guiding them. But at the end of service, I'm like, who loves you? Miss Amanda loves you.
Yeah.
Who loves you even more? Jesus loves me.
So good.
That I hug him, I high five him. That's what I want you to leave with. That when you look back, like I do, Pastor Harvey Lang, that they poured so much into me at a young age.
Yeah.
If I leave this earth and that's what I leave. Glory to God. I couldn't ask for anything better.
I believe you would receive a well done, good and faithful servant for that one.
Right.
And, just to kind of draw our time to some close, and I would love to have you pray. I want to say a few things, though, in closing of our time. First, thank you both for sharing everything. Giving just even a small glimpse. There's so much more to your story, but a small glimpse into knowing you, understanding who you are as people and as a couple. I think it's, it's encouraging. You make me, and I'm sure many others, feel normal in the things that we've, challenges and the different things that we've faced. I'd say to you specifically, though, Amanda, you are an exceptional children's pastor. And I pray that people that watch this would feel and sense your heart for the children. I pray that it would bring comfort to parents. I pray that it stirs a passion in our house to give more time, talent, and resource to the kids of this house and this community. Watching your heart for them, it inspires me, and I'm a father, so I get to have the privilege of you pastoring my kids, and I've told you many stories. They come home singing the songs, you teach them, quoting the Bible verses, you're teaching them. Sometimes they've got swords of the Spirit that they come home and hit me with because they're having fun, They love going and spending time with you. And that shows it's so much more for them than going to church. They look up to you, and they consider you a friend as much as their pastor. And so you're so good at what you do, and I just want to say thank you for that. That for whatever season the Lord allows me to get to do this with you, I'm honored for both of you to be a part of the house. And I think it's very brave of you to share all the things that you've shared. The fact that you've been through so much is such a testimony to the faithfulness of God and the call on your life. You do have kids every week.
I do.
Can I just affirm someone listening? He doesn't always answer the prayer the way you think he will. That's the lesson you taught our kids. That's the life lesson you've lived. But he answers it perfectly.
Yeah.
And ultimately, some people might miss that in many ways, Amanda and Chris Palmer are living in their miracle. every single week you get a kid, a thing, and we can miss it. I miss it. Like, you stirred in me as a friend, like going, am I missing my miracle because I thought it would look a certain way? And thank you. Like, that's what I'm saying, is like, when we get to have these conversations and things that I know about you, we disciple each other. And that's so true about your life. And the lesson I'm learning from you in this conversation is many of us are living in our miracle, but we don't slow down or take the time to see it because he doesn't always answer it in the way we think he will. And I thank you. I thank you for that. Because of your vulnerability, I was able to receive that today, and I'm sure many others will too. But for the sake of time and for today and for these moments, many more conversations will come, I'm sure, because we're going to be spending time together in different ways, shapes, and forms, because we're going to have school teachers and principals and all people coming in, which I think would be cool to have you a part of some of those conversations. But would you pray?
Sure.
Pray for the children's ministry. Pray for the church, and then whatever the Holy Spirit leads you to pray about. But let's just pray and seal all in that we talked about. Is that good?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Dear Heavenly Father, we just come to you with hearts of gratitude and thank you for the miracles that you have, we're living in, that I get to live in every single day, and that to just be part of something bigger than myself. And the children of this house and this community, Lord, let me and Chris and Lift Church be the hands and feet for you, and just go out. There's so many more kids that need to hear about you and feel that they are part of something. And we know that your kingdom is the something they need to be a part of. So just guide our feet and our minds to whatever comes next. Let you be leading us. I don't want to do it on my own accord. I don't want it to be my way, Lord. Let your way just come forth and guide us and direct us into 2025. I feel big things are going to happen. I want to see more of the community get in the schools, Lord. Just if it's your way, make it happen, Lord, and just open those doors, close the doors that need to be closed. I just pray for Lift Church as we in 2024, Lord, just continue to bless this house. And as we enter 2025 and the DNA of Lift Church gets expanded and to different locations or whatever your way is going to be, Lord, let the children's ministry follow suit in that and impact kids in different cities and different environments, Lord, that just use us in a mighty way. I ask for more leaders to come forth, that if they feel a tug on their heart, whether it's to get up in front of class or just be a helper in the class, Lord, those kids need them. It's not Miss Amanda needs them. It's the kids at Lift Church need more people to volunteer and step up, whether that's a grandma or whether that's a mama too, and that her kids are downstairs and she's upstairs helping, Lord. Just move in their hearts to come and to help in kids ministry. We pray for our community, that they feel that Lift Church is the bright shining light, the city on a hill that they can come and feel welcome in. I thank you for that. I thank you for Pastor Micah and his strong leadership, Lord, that he just listens to you and he keeps you at the center of it all. And as a staff member that works alongside him, that is felt every single time we are together. And he always says that I want to love more of Jesus and love more of you, Lord. And just working with someone like that helps me do that. I pray for my husband.
Yes, Lord.
I pray for our marriage.
Yes, Lord.
Lord, keep us strong and grounded in you. You have done so much for us. And then if people see us, Lord, let them not be afraid to ask, like, what our story is.
Yes.
How can we come along people that have a similar story or that fighting battles, Lord? Let us be their prayer warriors. I thank you and praise you and give you all the glory. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you both so much. I appreciate you.
Yeah.
It was a good conversation and good time.
Yeah.
Amen.